Hi, this is Bill Sutton.
And Jason Sutton.
And welcome to another episode of Sutton Impact Family Style. Lots to talk about today.
As per usual, yes. We got Sports Marketing Minute to start with.
Before I do that, I want to shout out today, in 1970, Three Rivers Stadium opened up. And while I wasn't at the very first game, I was at one of the opening games there. And just so you know, to bring you up to date, admission for a general admission seat in the second level was $1.90.
I know. I couldn't. When you showed me that, it was just shocking.
I know. For $1.90, I got to see Roberto Clemente, Willie Stargell, Al Oliver, and a lot of great players.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
And they opened that day against the Big Red Machine, and Tony Perez hit the first home run in Three Rivers Stadium. And I know it's kind of odd that the stadium would open in the middle of the year. I was at the last game in Forbes Field, which was June 30th, I want to say it was, against the Cubs. And it was like a free-for-all. We took home a row of seats, ripped them out and just carried them home, put them on a streetcar and paid to take them home. One of the guys I was with was climbing the scoreboard. In those days, you had those metal numbers that hung off, and he was firing those off to people in the crowd. Just crazy. And that's the piece of my chair right there. So I kept the piece of chair.
Seat number 11?
Seat number 11.
Still there.
From right field. Yep. So that's that. On my Sport Business Moment, I want to talk about David Hill, the founder of Fox, and some of his thoughts on television and where television's going. And I find it really interesting that he is critical of the embrace debate philosophy that Fox and ESPN have followed in their afternoon programming. He points out that out of 300 million people, those shows draw 110,000 people.
Wow, those numbers are way lower than I thought.
Yeah.
Way
That's
lower.
what he said. So, I mean, that's David Hill in this week's Sport Business Journal. He's also televising a darts event. And he said that his description is people want to be engaged and people follow things differently. And so he's going to try darts to see how darts go. And he's very big on eSports, saying that people now just follow things differently. And they watch things because they want to participate, not watch. And by watching, they learn how to participate better. They learn how to play the game and improve their abilities, improve their talents. And so he's a big booster of esports television events.
Which like I said, I watch peripherally. From time to time, I'll catch a glimpse of something or other, and it can be exciting. Like it really can. Like it can capture the same drama that a lot of other things capture. I mean,
do you think you have to be familiar with the game to enjoy watching it?
For me, I kind of do.
Yeah.
There's just that level of knowledge because everything is happening really fast on the screen.
Yeah.
I think oddly, a fighting game, everybody sort of understands a fighting game. It's, whether you're talking about, they have...
Or a fantasy game, because you have an objective is to take over the castle or, defeat the enemy or whatever it is.
And I guess technically with, most of the shooting games, it's pretty understandable. Like it's Team A versus Team B in some sort of,
Sure.
either death match or capture the flag, and everybody understands those concepts.
Yeah.
And it happens very quickly. And again, I think, as you pointed out in the article, too, he was talking about time and how long it takes to watch these things.
Yeah.
And an esport is very quick. You're watching the beginning and the end of the match, and it's super fast. Like, if it's a fighting game, it's, sometimes less than a minute, and that round is over. Mm-hmm. And you have all the, the highs and lows are just bam, 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 right after one another. Even with sort of the 5-on-5, like, even some of the longer matches are still less than 20. They're pretty quick. Like you're watching,
Yeah, and you look at the, look at the affordability of something like that. Look at the rights fees to show that as opposed to rights fees for the NFL or something like that. It's also affordable television for the TV companies.
Right, and they're, I forget what the numbers are, but Sony has sold 100 million PlayStation 4s. Xbox has sold 60 million Xbox Ones. And that doesn't count PS3s, PS4s, PCs people play games on. Like,
yeah,
everybody can play games. And again, like you said, it's something that I can watch and be like, oh, that's a good strategy. I want to take that to my own when I go play it. Then I go do it. Whereas with something like the NBA or, I can't play like LeBron.
No. And you can't say I'm going to make that move,
right?
Because I'm not 6'9", 280 pounds, and I'm not that good.
No, it's just
it's a good point. Talk about we talked a little bit about your cord cutting Because I said you were a cord cutter, and you said, well, not really. Let's talk about that a little bit.
All right. Well, the reason I don't technically, I mean, I guess, the notion of cord cutting, I think for a while I sort of heard people speaking about it, and they spoke about it in these terms of like, millennials have cut the cord. And when I think of cord cutting, I think of not only did we literally cut the cord that we're paying for, but we've ostracized that and we've got our own thing.
Yes.
Like we're creating our own content over on YouTube. We're watching our own content. We're not watching what you're watching. But that's not what cord cutting is. They're still consuming everything that the cord people create.
Just on their own terms.
Just on their own terms. And for me, my own terms, and hopefully this won't make either one of us get in trouble, because I mean, technically, but like, if you subscribe to HBO, you get a code for HBO Go, and I use your HBO Go code.
Yeah.
So technically, I cut the cord on my cable. I don't pay for cable. But I'm using other people's codes to pay for the content that I watch.
But it's fair, because I don't use my HBO Go.
Right, it is fair. But I mean, at the same time, like, I just feel like when we say cord cutting, it's not like people are sick of what is being provided by the cords. They're sick of paying for it.
And they want to watch it on their own terms.
And watch it on their own terms.
Which means they might not want to sit down and watch a 3-hour NFL game, but they might want to watch a cord.
Right, but also...
on their phone while they're doing something else.
You have those, like, and again, some controversial apps, like Periscope. Which means there was a time I really wanted to watch the Steeler game, and I forget where I was. I was traveling, I couldn't get access to it. So I went on Periscope, and somebody literally had their phone set up, and they were playing the game through the TV. Like, I was watching their stream of the game on my phone for free. So I technically had cut the cord.
Yeah.
I wasn't watching the paid subscription, but I was still watching the paid program, which I think is somewhat problematic because...
you can't measure it.
You can't measure it, and it's also... Like I said, on a personal note, I made a film called Deadly Weekend, which was my thesis film for school. I ended up getting distribution, and before it came out in the US, we watched the numbers on Pirate Bay, YouTube. It was downloaded illegally 1 million times. Well over. It was like $1.4 million. 1.4 million times it was downloaded illegally. Those people didn't, on some level, they cut the cord.
Yes.
They didn't watch my movie through traditional means. But as the creator of said content, I was hurt. That's a lot of money that, I mean...
yeah.
Conservatively saying I should get $1 for every time somebody watched my movie, that's $1.4 million.
Which would change your life.
Would change my life.
Yeah.
I'd be in a very different position today than I am now.
Yeah.
And those people they still enjoyed my content in their own creative way. But the content creator didn't get anything from it. And I know it's been the same with music and everything else. And people, it just... Like I said, I feel like if you say you cut the cord, and that meant that you went out and you've got your own YouTube channel, and you're creating your own programming, you want nothing to do with the people that used to be behind the cord. But if you're still consuming that, then it's a weird... Because A, they can't decide who's watching and who's not watching. But if you create the content, you're owed some sort of compensation for creating said content. And there's so many ways that, the cord cutters have basically just found a way to steal. Because that's what it is at the end of the day. If you're still consuming the content, but you're not paying for the content provider,
you're stealing.
You're stealing. Pirating, stealing, whatever you want to call it. And again, it's so, like I said, it's the genie's out of the bottle. Pandora's box has been opened.
Yeah.
And there's no putting it back. But it's odd because, like I said, people are still consuming the same content. They're just not consuming it in the same ways. And more importantly, they're not consuming it in a way that they're making money from it. Which eventually is costing people jobs and everything else.
Yeah.
And changing lives for the negative.
All right. Our new feature today.
Well, just because we end up talking about the family nearly every single week, we're going to have the Ball Family Minute because the Ball family...
doesn't go away.
doesn't go away. And I know we talked after the last podcast, Lonzo had come off a really bad game.
Yes.
And since then, he has been absolutely on fire. Not from the outside of the shot, clearly, but...
But what he was expected to do.
He's putting up triple doubles. He's setting up his teammates. You watch the way the Lakers are playing, and it is that sort of infectious. When you have somebody that distributes the ball and gets you the ball in good places, all of a sudden you start moving more on offense. Because if I cut and I get open, I'm going to get the ball if it's in Lonzo's hands. And you're seeing that.
Yeah, you are.
And
he wore three different brands of shoes this week. 4 different brands of shoes, right?
Right. He wore the big baller shoes, and opening game, which was not great.
Not great. Then he wore Nikes where he had first triple-double.
The Kobe's, he wanted to get some Mamba in him.
Yep.
And then he wore the James Harden Adidas.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget what he wore the next night.
Under Armour.
Under Armour. Yeah.
I don't know if he wore Steph Curry's shoe, but he wore Under Armour.
Right.
And so now LeVar has said that we're for sale.
We're for sale.
Price is right, he will wear your shoe. Which is kind of where we thought we were going to be a year
right.
ago.
And again, like we said earlier, like it seems like from the beginning, well, you sort of have to respect the eldest Ball for his, attempt to, it's make the most money he possibly can.
Sure.
It seems like the best way to do that wasn't to try and take an unproven commodity and just start your own brand of shoes, but take short-term deals with the biggest competitors, leave yourself a free agent as often as possible for your shoes,
and see where it
goes. And maybe by the time, maybe Lonzo's third or fourth 2-year deal, all of a sudden you got the second Ball in the NBA, presumably.
Or maybe he wins Rookie of the Year this year and then you launch a shoe.
Right. Or maybe, once he's established himself as a legitimate NBA star, maybe they're a little more willing to say, the big baller shoe by Nike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see where it goes. But it's been interesting. I mean, and he doesn't seem to ever fade out of the spotlight.
No.
And I don't think it's gonna fit. I'm sure on opening night, the Lakers are going to be playing one of the Lakers are going to be involved on opening night.
Mm-hmm.
I would want to feel pretty good about saying that.
And again, I have to applaud the kid because he really responded to, he had a terrible opening game. He's got all the pressure of his dad on him. You could tell in that first game, like, people want to show him up.
Mm-hmm.
Because they know, like, again, we talked about last week, like, if you dunk on Lonzo Ball, you steal from Lonzo Ball, you block Lonzo Ball's shot, you're on SportsCenter.
No question.
So he's got an even bigger target on his back, and so far he seems to be responding.
I would say it's almost like a Johnny Manziel-like target.
Yeah.
Let's just hope he responds better than Johnny Manziel did.
True. And before we move into our NFC North preview, I have to give a shout out to someone I usually do not like very well. As you know, I've never been a big Peyton Manning fan.
Right.
But Peyton Manning hosted the ESPYs, which I only watched the opening 10-minute segment. But he was pretty fantastic. He was, lively. The jokes were funny. He sold them really well. He seemed to have a good sense of humor, stage presence. And I enjoyed that 10 minutes. Like, I didn't, I clicked on it just to sort of see what it was,
mm-hmm.
with no intention of watching the entire segment. I watched the entire segment. I laughed a few times. I really enjoyed it. And again, not a big Peyton Manning fan, but he impressed me. And maybe I'll like him more post-football than I ever did in football.
So the old George Harrison quote from one of his Traveling Wilbury songs, overexposed, commercialized, tailoring with care. Peyton's senses who he is, his comfort level there, just, he can spoof himself a little bit now, which is good.
Right. And he's always had a little bit of that self-deprecate. I mean, despite all the confidence that he clearly possesses, he's always had a little bit of that, oh, shucks, I'm just a good old boy from the South, Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
All right.
Buy your Papa John's.
And buy your Papa John's, which I don't get, but, if you
no.
enjoy it, enjoy it. So now we're going to talk NFC North football. So we've got our Bears, our Vikings, our Lions, and our Packers. And I assume we both feel like the team that's going to come in last place in that division is pretty clear. And that's the city of Chicago.
Yes. Maybe for the next several years.
Maybe for the next several years. They had an interesting offseason. They finally cut ties with Jay Cutler.
Yeah,
who's now moving into TV and not even football.
It was an ugly relationship the entire time he was there. It wasn't a good relationship.
No. It seemed like no matter who the coach was, no matter who the receivers were, and again, visually, it's tough to judge somebody because you don't really know what they are. I mean, but he was one of those guys you looked at and it was easy to feel like he seems like a sourpuss. He seems like he's whining. He's got bad body language and all that sort of stuff, which again, you don't really know unless you're in the man's head.
Mm-hmm.
But then they went and gave Mike Glennon a lot of money to be their quarterback.
Yeah. I didn't understand that.
No.
I mean, there's a lot of other guys that could be the guy until you're
right. And after you signed Mike Glennon, who's still fairly young, I think mid-20s, you went and drafted Mitchell Trubisky. You traded up to get him.
Yeah, big time traded up.
Big time traded up to get Trubisky.
Which you probably didn't have to do.
Which probably didn't have to do. And, the Trubisky, I mean, I hate sounding like those draftniks with the wingspan and everything else, but I know he's got small hands. And small hands are never a good thing with a quarterback, let alone a quarterback in a cold weather city.
Mm-hmm.
And especially a guy that never won a lot of games and was really kind of a one-year wonder. But they like him. I don't really know what you got. I mean, Jordan Howard looked good at running back.
I know what you got. A 4-12 team at best.
A 4-12 team at best. Well, Vegas says 5.5 is the over on their wins.
I would bet the under.
And I would bet the under as well. I think Chicago's going to have... I know the NFL you can rebuild quickly, but I don't see them rebuilding. I mean, unless Mike Glennon is not the person we think he is and Trubisky turns out to be way better than we assume he is, I just don't see them doing very well. Now, my team in third place, I have the Minnesota Vikings.
With or without Teddy Bridgewater?
I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is back yet.
Okay.
I know he was throwing without a knee brace on in camp, but it seems like this is still Sam Bradford's team. And
well, if Sam Bradford's team, they'll finish third.
They'll finish third. I think Bridgewater's team may finish third as well. Like, they've got some nice guys on the outside. I think Treadwell's going to be good. He started coming on at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Stephon Diggs turned out to be a great pick late in the draft.
Yeah.
They've got some, they've got decent tight end. I think they're better than we're giving them credit for, but I just think the other two teams are just that much better. They play the Steelers, they play the Saints, Bucks, Lions, Packers, Ravens. It's not an easy schedule.
No.
And again, Sam Bradford's one of those guys I've just never gotten.
I don't either.
Like, when he went for those first round picks to get him to the Vikings.
Overpaid.
I was shocked.
I was too.
Because I've never seen him do anything where I was like, that's an NFL quarterback. Like, that guy.
If we had him, we would win the Super Bowl. We hit him, we're in the playoffs. No.
And I know the mentality last year was, we're the Minnesota Vikings. We've got this great defense. We've got a solid running game. We've got playmakers on the outside. We've got a tight end in Kyle Rudolph. We're just that one player away.
No.
But when the quarterback is you're never one player away in the NFL.
And if you think the quarterback's the one player, that's a long way away.
That's a long way away. And
that's
Sam Bradford can't be that
That's a galaxy far, far away. It's a Star Wars pick. Yeah, they're not. I mean, they get a great stadium though.
Great stadium, great fan
for a
base.
couple years. Super Bowl, host Super Bowl this year.
One of my favorite uniforms in the NFL, if that's worth anything.
There's a Super Bowl, but we feel very certain that they won't be in it.
Now comes to our final two teams. I have the Detroit Lions coming in second in this division.
As do I.
And again, this is one of those, like, I have them coming in second. I could easily see them having the talent to come into first. But I'm sort of holding the history of the Detroit Lions against this team and the Detroit Lions. Like, I feel like they're always going to disappoint in some way, somehow, because of the Lions.
Here's the other thing I think. I think in a division that historically is a bad weather division, you really only have two teams in it for the play in bad weather.
Mm-hmm.
The Packers and the Bears. And the Bears are not good.
No.
And the Packers are good. And I think they walk when you're the Vikings and you're the Lions, you walk into Green Bay, and it's just you just can't deal with that, the atmosphere and the temperatures and everything else. You just don't play well.
No.
Because you don't play in that like you used to play all the time. And so it's almost like, you're a dome team. It's like you're a dome team. It's like a team from the South. It's too big of an adjustment for you to go and play there consistently, especially if you're playing against Aaron Rodgers.
Just like the teams up north when they have to come play Miami early in the season.
Yeah, and it's so hot.
They're just not ready for that heat and that humidity. They can't take it. They're done by the third quarter. Stafford looks like last year he finally started to become the quarterback everybody thought he was, as opposed to just a strong arm.
Yeah.
He's one of those quarterbacks that I think he's only going to be 27 this year, despite the fact that it seems like he's been in the NFL for way longer than that.
I know. And he's
one of those surprisingly young where you're like, wait, he's how old? I thought he was like 30 or 31. He's like 27.
With the exception of Thanksgiving, when you get to see him, if you don't live in Detroit. Maybe once.
Unless you're a huge, Red Zone NFL Network kind of person. They have a lot of guys on offense that you've heard of, but I don't know who they have that scares you. You got Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, Eric Ebron. You have Amir Abdullah at running back. The offensive line is what it is, and I feel like the defense, even though it improved under Caldwell, they're still not a scary defense. You can't.
No, there's no intimidation.
You're not going to win with the Detroit Lions. I mean, as that being your strongest unit. Mm-hmm. I just don't think they have the playmakers, and I don't think they have, Aaron Rodgers.
Exactly. And I mean, he's still the difference maker. Although, if he goes down, there's no way that team wins the division.
No, and that's if he goes down, but he's,
But he's getting older now.
He's getting older now.
A lot of hits.
But Devontae Parker really stepped up. Looked like he was, who do they have? Why am I flaking on that now? Jordy Nelson came back, played pretty well.
Yeah.
They have a very solid offense.
Very.
You still have some playmakers on defense. You've got Green Bay. And again, there's certain players in the NFL at quarterback that when they want to win a game, they can win a game.
Yeah.
And Aaron Rodgers still makes throws that, you just don't see any other quarterback in the NFL making on a regular basis. Not just because, even they had a couple Hail Marys last year that he completed again. And again, he puts the ball just on the money. You think about the throw he made in the playoffs. Just rolled out, going the wrong way, throwing across his body, and just threw a bullet 40 yards down the field.
He elevates that team to a championship contender level. Without him, they're not even close.
No.
It's almost like if you take Russell Westbrook away from Oklahoma City, they don't make the playoffs.
Not even close.
If you take him out, it's the same thing. That team, if he goes down or they have a significant injury to that team, Detroit sneaks in. But right. He's the guy, and he's always going to be the guy until he retires.
And I would say overall, looking in that division, I don't see any of those teams winning more than a game in the playoffs.
If that. I don't. Detroit is a shot to be a wild card team.
Minnesota still has the defense. Like I said, Minnesota has the pieces. It just, I have, as a personal, I have no faith in Sam Bradford.
Think about it. The wild card team's not going to come from the West. Mm-hmm. Do you use two teams in the West?
I think Arizona's a team that can always, Arizona, Seattle. Obviously not the Rams.
No. Or the Niners.
No, the Niners are in full rebuild mode.
So you got one team out of that division. I think you have two teams out. I think you have three teams maybe out of the East when we talk about the East.
Right. And you got the NFC South, which again...
Yeah. You could have two.
You got
a wild card in the South, you get a wild card in the East. It's going to be battle.
Yeah.
I don't see this division having any more than one representative in the playoffs.
Right, because it's hard to really imagine any of these teams winning more than 10 games.
Agree. Yeah. Agree.
Yeah. And pretty much so. We are not fans of the NFC North. Next week we're talking about our favorite division, the AFC North.
I've always loved the Vikings. And I've always loved the Lions, and I've always loved that division. It's always been a real hard-hitting, fun division to watch, but they become kind of mediocre. And just, not as much fun to watch anymore.
No. Any closing thoughts?
I'm excited about Judge. Let's talk about home run derby for a minute. Aaron Judge
is an absolute freak.
Absolute freak.
6'9", 275.
And
he's putting up just
blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
I don't see how they don't sell out almost every game they play. They should be played to no less than 90% capacity at home or on the road. You got to go watch this guy play. You got to go see this guy. He's unbelievable. And I thought there was a lot of pressure on him in home run derby, and I don't think it affected him at all.
No.
He looked as relaxed as I've ever seen anybody in home run derby.
Well, he's been playing in in Yankee Stadium all year.
Yeah.
Where you get as much pressure as anywhere in baseball.
Yeah.
And he's putting up, pretty historic numbers.
Yeah.
And I was sort of surprised. I'm happy to see baseball finally seem to be embracing. I've heard talk that he's the new face of baseball.
He's one of them.
He's one of them, but I was kind of sad that they haven't pushed other guys in the past.
It's hard. I mean, I love Mike Trout, but like we talked about before, if you don't live in California, you're not seeing Mike Trout.
Right.
You don't live on the West Coast, you're not staying up till 10:30 to watch baseball. Mike Trout just came back. I think comes back yesterday or comes back today.
Right.
I'm excited about Mike Trout being back. I mean, he's a fun player to watch. Aaron Judge is a fun player to watch.
And Aaron Judge does have the guy's 6'8", 275 pounds. He's a giant amongst men.
Yeah.
Like when you watch him when you see him next to a catcher, or when he gets a hit and he's like on first base, like he's a tower. Like he's just.
When you see him, you go, he's an outfielder?
Right. He plays baseball.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's a shock. And in Belgium for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, the Home Run Derby this year showcased a lot of young players people should go watch. So it's good for baseball.
Very good for baseball. And like I said, he is exciting, and hopefully he keeps it up.
Yeah, I hope so. It's a good story. He seems very grounded. Love to see it happen. I watched Bellinger hit a cycle last night. Of all the rookies of the year the Dodgers had, it's the first Dodger rookie ever to hit a fifth cycle. So another good story. I mean, a lot of good stories in baseball right now. Some good races, some very interesting teams to watch. Good year for baseball.
And maybe we won't have just an automatic Astros, LA Dodgers World Series.
Maybe not.
Which might not be a bad thing anyway, considering all the
Yeah,
talent on
honestly,
both those
I think
teams.
it'll be a pretty good series.
I was like, but honestly, given the talent on both those teams, I'd be more than happy to watch that as well. So again, thank you to all our Patreon sponsors. Please continue to give us. We got some ratings on iTunes, some new ones this week.
Good.
Please keep those up. You don't even have to listen to the show. You can just go give us 5 stars anyway. It helps us. We want you to listen, but at least rate us. That would help. So until next week.
Bill Sutton signing off.